Hi everybody, welcome to Quarter Inch Seam. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Kind of different, but not different. You'll see. Here we go. Now hear me out. Okay, we got the corners tied on this. I didn't finish tying them off last night because we had to go do dinner and I had to make dinner and then that was it. I was done. So, what's next? So I gotta do that tonight. I'll just do that tonight while I'm watching TV. But, we've gotta get the binding done. And this is what's gonna make today a little bit different. So, I have gotten some comments that I've kind of been just squirreling away in this empty space here. And then I've been looking at some things that have been coming across, like my own social media stuff. Like, you know, when I'm just kind of scrolling through social media or Facebook. When I've been on those platforms. And the thing that keeps popping out at me, like over and over and over again, is kind of why and how this channel started. And so I thought, you know what, because I've been getting comments along the same lines, I thought that's what I want to talk about some of these things and maybe approach them. Pardon the floor. I had to move that table over yesterday and it's just been a disaster. Is for people that are... Now, look, listen. Okay? What in the absolute... There. Scary. Is this? You know, if you've just started quilting or sewing and you're dying to make a quilt, maybe you're like me. Maybe you're like, okay, I understand how a sewing machine worked. When I first got my sewing machine, I was like, okay, I got this. I don't need to practice. When we left the sewing machine store with this baby, the girl handed me this kit, which I still haven't done, which we are going to do before the end of the year. I've made a commitment that we're going to do that before the end of the year. And it's this table topper. It was like a Riley Blake table topper kit. Probably very expensive. And she said, start with something small. I know you want to make blankets. I know you want to make quilts. But start with something smaller. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great advice. Okay. And then I was like, psst. And I want to start with something small. And the only problem with that is that once you get into it and you're doing it and you're by yourself, right? You're at home, you're by yourself at your dining room table or your sewing room or wherever you are. And you are, did I mention by yourself? That you realize you might not have a total grasp on everything, right? And so then you start watching videos and videos and videos after video after video. And you're trying to replicate what's in the video, and you're trying to, right? And the people in the videos never seem to do it wrong, right? They never seem to make a mistake. Or if they do, they just edited it out, right? And so your perception is they always get it right. They don't always get it right. They don't. But it's intimidating a little bit, you know, if you're a new sewer or a new quilter or what have you, to try and figure out how to make mistakes and move on from them and correct them and not have to watch 85 different YouTube channels or what have you. I'm rambling a little bit, but I hope you get my point. So I always wanted this channel to be a little bit about the reality and the real life of somebody who quilts and sews, who's not I'm not all that great. I'm not. I make mistakes all the time. You guys have seen me poke through the corner of things and sew stuff together and you name it, I've probably done it. And so some of the videos that I want to do always is letting you see that mistakes happen and how do you fix them? How can you correct them? Because it's very, very, very normal. Okay? It is how everybody starts. So anybody that tells you that they sat down at the machine and their first quilt was perfect is lying. And number 2, practice on something. I wish I had done that more. I wish I hadn't, like the first time that I quilted something, as I got into it and I started feeling how the machine moves when you're actually quilting a free motion quilt on your, on your sewing machine. I was like, holy cow, this feels very weird. And I didn't want to mess up my quilt, but I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't, your brain in the back of your brain is going, just get something smaller. Let's practice a little bit, but you want to get it done. You want to do your project. You want to finish your project. So, I've kind of rambled on a little bit, but I just want people, if you're new, if you don't have a lot of self-confidence, if you're not new and you don't have a lot of self-confidence, if you are like me and you've basically just kind of self-taught yourself this because I don't have time or resources to go to a whole bunch of quilt classes. I don't have the time because I have a job. I have to work. So today, while we chit chat, I just want you to bear that in mind. There are you're gonna mess up. You're gonna mess up an important project. You're gonna mess up a not important project. You're gonna nail things that you didn't think that you would be able to. But the most important thing is to keep sewing. Keep going. Like, you'll get better. I look at some of the stuff that I look at, even just the simple placemat. And the binding, like the size of the binding around it, my stitch around there was just about perfect. My first one was not. It was not. So what we're going to do today is binding. Now, some people are going to disagree with me on this, and if you disagree, you can put it in the comments, whatever. However, I think that an easy way to do your binding or to start your binding is, and here's another thing. Don't get so wired up about the foot you're using, the needle you're using, the thread you're using. Like when you're at the very beginning, I don't know how much that stuff, unless it's something where you're going to damage something, don't sew on like a silk blouse. I put cotton thread. I have the same needle on there for ages and ages and just a regular foot, right? A 1/4-inch foot is great because then you can see where your 1/4-inch seam is. You have a better gauge for that. But don't try and get all of that stuff perfect before you start. Get in the water. Maybe I'll tell you the story of how to swim today. All right, so for binding, I feel like very, very often I love to use, and some people are going to disagree with me because they're going to say it's more expensive. Okay, fine. It's fine. Disagree with me. But I don't like cutting yardage. I just don't. It's not my favorite thing. But I do love a jelly roll. And you can get jelly rolls. You can find them on sale. People are always closing them out. You can get, a jelly roll line from 2 years ago. Black is black, people. White is white. So if you need a white jelly roll, who cares if it's from a 2023 or 2020, design line? It doesn't matter. Now, you're probably not going to find white at a great, you know what I mean? But if you find a pattern that you like, buy the jelly roll. If it's on sale, it doesn't matter that it's not the current fabric line for whoever the designer is. Okay, now, here's what we're going to do. Can you see good? Oops. Okay, so we're gonna, let me just take it off. And there's lots of, I always mess up my binding. I always end up sewing on the wrong side or cutting on the wrong side or whatever. So you're gonna put, you know, you're gonna cross them like this, right? One end across the other end. And then you're just going to sew diagonally. Now I'm lucky, my machine has a laser on it, a little laser beam. So it shoots a red beam. You guys can almost see it. It's bright in here today, so I'll turn the light off. Okay. Can you see it a little bit better? Where'd my beam go? There. Oh, now you can see it. See the little laser beam? So it gives me a gauge of where I'm sewing. I really, really like that. I don't know if it's something that you can add on to other machines. If you haven't bought your machine yet, I think Brother and Baby Lock have them starting on their Crescendo line. So I really like it. I didn't think I was going to use it or need it. I use it and I need it. Okay? We're just going to sew diagonally. If you're doing a solid color binding, you know, and it's basically the same color, and there's no real difference between the front and the back, I don't know how big of a difference it makes that right sides together, wrong sides together. It's the same side. But you do want to check your fabric. All right, scissors. I don't know why that did that. Okay. Then you're just going to table is a mess today. You're just going to cut. See, we took the two pieces, we sewed them together. You're just going to take and you're going to cut off. I usually do about 1/4 inch. I think that's what you're supposed to do. And then when you open it, see it's sewn together on a nice diagonal seam, so that you're not going to see a lot of the seam and it's not going to be real bulky. That's what I was always told. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know if it would make a difference if you sewed them, you know, straight edge together. Guess what? You could sew them straight edge together. It wouldn't really make that big of a difference. I'm really convinced that it wouldn't. Now, my quilt that I'm doing right now is taking about 2. It's a little less than 2, so but I don't want to have to sew stuff on. I don't want to get to the end and not have enough binding. So I'm going to do basically, there's also apps that will tell you how much binding you need or how much fabric you need or how much yardage or whatever you need. But for this one, I used the same 2.5 inch strips for my border. So I did a 2.5 inch border, and I just used the same. So I'll use probably, you know, a good portion of this jelly roll. Maybe 14 to 16. See, nice. And I'm not worried about. The only thing you got to be careful of is you want to make sure that if you're doing it this way, well, if you're using yardage or this, it doesn't matter, is that all your seams are going the same way. Here's the other advantage of using a jelly roll. Well, I'm going to give you advice that I never take. Don't cut yourself too short with whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're Am I doing this right? Yeah. If you're, I mess up sewing on the bias like this all the time. So if you're afraid that you're gonna, you're gonna make mistakes, just make sure you have enough. Is my only point, because you can just cut and start over. I do that all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean all the time. All right, let's see. So far, so good today. All kinds of little stragglers. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put 5 on. No. 2, 4, 6. I'm going to put 7 on. Okay. And then turn to the right. This is why I think that you'll build your confidence, especially when it comes to sewing, along the way. But I'll also say this. Nobody's keeping score. Nobody's keeping tabs. Right. Oh, you don't look at that mess table. Nobody's adding up how many, mistakes you've made. There's no book. When you get to the pearly gates, they're not going to ask how many times you had to rip out your seams. And as everybody tells me on this channel, all of you wonderful quilters and sewers and followers and master quilters and everything in between, do it your way. It'll be fine. No one's gonna notice. Okay, let's see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to put 1 more on, and then I think that's going to be enough. Yeah, 7. And then I'm going to take it to my ironing board, my regular ironing board, fold it in half, the whole thing. Wait, let's do this first. Okay. Then I'm going to take this whole thing to my ironing board. Right everywhere. Take it to the ironing board, fold it in half, right? Fold it in half so that the seam is on the inside. Okay? Fold it in half. And iron it really good in half. So that you end up with a 1.5 miles of binding that is now 2.5 1.25 inches wide. But don't cut it. Just press it in half. Why do we do this? Why are they always saying, oh yeah, well, I iron my binding in half. Oh, wow. Why do you do that? 1, so that you have a nice finished edge on one side. On both sides, actually. Right? See, here you have no open seam. And 2, I think it just gives it a little girth. Who doesn't want a little girth? It's sturdier that way. Okay? All right. So, I just wanted to hop on here really fast today. It's not a super long video. Most of you already know how to sew and cut and iron your binding. But I've just had a lot of people lately who have said that, they were really trying to build up their confidence when it came to sewing, or they were trying to be more confident, or They were so afraid of messing it up or messing up their quilt or their project or whatever it was. Mess it up. Mess it up. Because life is all about the mess ups. It's all about the little messes and the big messes that we make and fixing them. And, you know, most people aren't going to notice them, especially on a quilt. Okay? All right. And start with small projects. Practice. Get 2 pieces of fabric, throw a small piece of cheap batting in between, and practice. Just sit at your machine. I know it's boring, but kind of get a feel for the machine, because it's a little bit intimidating. Like if you try and do like I did, and you put the first time you try and do all these parts is on an actual quilt that you wanted to give to somebody. So because we still want to do a good job, right? Mistakes and all, we still want to do a good job. So that's the lady at the sewing room. Shout out to Lisa in Sacramento. I don't even know where she is or where if she still works there or what. But she was super, super cool and super, super nice and very, very helpful. Gave me the best advice that I didn't follow, which was start with something small. Make a placemat, make a table runner, make a mug rug, make something like that you can maneuver on your machine, that you can get a little confident with, right? Get the feel of the machine. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you that. I hope you have a fantastic evening. We're having spaghetti and meatballs for dinner. I like the spaghetti. Steve likes the meatballs. So here we go. And I think that's it. Have a fabulous morning tomorrow. And always remember, be confident. And only a 1/4 inch seam. See you guys tomorrow. Love ya. Bye.